Have you ever seen those electric hybrid models and felt you're missing out on something? Well, you probably are. Hey, welcome to This Edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Robertson. Now behind me is one of the hugest impacts on this market, the 2017 Toyota Prius, a vehicle I've test driven many times, even decades ago. And while they've always stepped it up each and every time and made me want to get rid of the gas guzzler and go to something a little bit more electrifying. Now this is the hybrid plug-and-play model, basically meaning it does have the power cord back in for charging the batteries, allowing you to go straight battery mode on this vehicle. Of course, it has the hybrid technology, bringing in the gasoline power to the batteries and giving you the best of both worlds. And of course, you can go full gasoline should the batteries be charging and not be ready to add power. The best part of that is you get the best of all three worlds, allowing you to get decent range whenever you need it, depending on whatever power demands there is. That versus a true electric model, which is only going to give you a basic amount of range until you have to, well, plug it up again. Now, first thing to think about on any hybrid model is, well, the exterior. And from day one, the Prius doesn't lie. It is pretty much straight geekish. All starting with, well, the overall profile. Really a very stout front end, wedge-like body going into a hatchback-like model. Now, this is changed from 2016, a little more enhanced and maybe a little bit more flair. And we'll see that as we get to the back end. From the profile, you can truly see the dynamic, design of this vehicle that I mentioned. And it all starts again with the kind of wedge-like look. But as you start to look at some finer details, you'll see some chiseling there with the mirrors. And I like that we've gone with really this black accent through the middle. Almost looks like a piercing fluid-like flow back here. And even this pillar here, black, and really wraps around to the rest of the vehicle, almost separates the roof from the body. Now, looking at the numbers, what you're going to find is this vehicle fits quite well into the compact area. Now, this is not truly the sense of a hatchback, even though there is a huge rear deck lid here. It's not sawed off like the likes of a VW Golf or anything, but this is definitely a true fifth door with the amount of lift you have here. Now, by the numbers, this vehicle is about 183 inches overall, wheelbase around about 106, good numbers and something comparable to what else is in this market. Now, as for width and height, just under 5 feet tall and just under 6 feet wide, really allowing it to get into those urban settings, something that's really going to be beneficial, especially when you go to the battery mode and find those cities that, well, have those chargeabilities. Lastly is ground clearance. This vehicle fairly snug at about just under 5 inches, which means, well, it's quite low, and for my 6-foot frame, maybe just a squat and sit to climb inside. Now, looking from the back end, this is again where you can see that wedge design. And what's interesting, the roof, of course, sweeps up, sweeps down. The whole time it goes from front to back, it wedges up and really gives you that kind of fluid flow and really 2 points meeting there at the back end. Now, some things to talk about really is safety and security, all starting right here on the driver's side. Now, we do have blind spot awareness on this vehicle, even though there doesn't really seem to be any blind spots that I noted. But of course, you can always have a blind spot in this area for the driver. But I like the fact that they've added that blind spot awareness. Seems to be standard across a lot of vehicles, but it does fall short on some. Now, as you look at the ingress in this vehicle, what I like is it is smart key system. Smart vehicle when it comes to electric hybrid technology. It's got to be smart even right at the door. Now, what I like is it truly has a intuitive like system, pretty much meaning you put your hand right here, it knows you're there, pull on it, and it opens right up. Now, to help secure it away, there is a nice little touch area here, locks it right up. Now, lockability and security swings around here to the fill-up area. Now, don't be confused here because there is a matching one of these on that side, a little bit bigger. I'll show you in a second. That is for the chargeability of this vehicle. But when it comes to fill up, this is on the driver's side. So make sure you're putting gas on this side, not on the other. Now, what I like is this is always locked all the time. Security when it comes to fill up. Instead, there's a little button right there on the dash, pop it, this pops open and really allows for security, not just in the doors and everywhere else, but also in the fill up area. So the driver's side is for the gas fill up, the passenger side for the electric portion. Now, where you're going to find that cord is back here in the rear hatch area, really hidden in this back niche under the cargo floor. Now, it's a nice tight area. It does require you to shove all the stuff once you get back in here, but pretty easy to use. Now, what I like is it is a fairly lengthy cord, so for the most part, where you park your vehicle, hopefully to be fairly close, especially when you're up at a curve, some city that has these accessible plugs. Now this end, of course, goes to the house. And one thing they want to note is when you plug this in, you really don't want it dangling. You really want, there's an area where you add a hook and it kind of hangs there to help support it, because otherwise you're going to start wearing this out. Now that'll plug to the house. This fairly easy. There is a little hatch here that you keep covering up when you're not using it. Of course, when you're charging, it sits right over here. Now all you got to do is pull the trigger, simply clamp it in, and it locks in place. Then set the charge and the vehicle takes over. Let it charge overnight, couple hours, 7 or 8 hours. That's going to give it a nice full charge and allow you to go full battery mode on this vehicle. Now while we have this rear hatch open, let's look at the cargo area, an area that actually is bigger than you realize. Now first thing to talk about is that cord area. Now it's a nice tight niche right back here. It does require you to have some neatness when it comes to winding that cord up, because it is fairly tight. Also, what you'll need to do is pull this back, because there are some clips here on this rear cover, and it does just take a little bit of eyesight to be able to put that back. Once you do, that's a nice flat area. And to note, of course, there's batteries under this floor, so there's no storage, of course, to be expected here. Now what you're going to find is just under 20 cubic feet of space, and that's because it is very broad and open, of course, with this rear hatch. Now what you also notice is a rear tonneau cover. Really slides into place and allows for items to be hidden in here, of course, because if you can't see it, for the most part, maybe it won't be stolen. Now what I like is, well, it covers everything nice and neat. Now what also you're going to notice is this cargo rear tonneau cover can get locked into place like this, and that does become a kind of a blind spot when you put this rear hatch down, because what happens is this open glass that extends all the way down to here now can't be viewed, and that actually becomes kind of a blockade. So what you want to make sure is that rear tonneau is laying flat, so you have good rear view even out this back glass. Let's talk about the rear design while we're back here, and it starts really with the rear hatch glass and everything. You'll see that the glass isn't just straight or domed at all. It actually has a wavy portion right through here, right through the center of this rear spoiler. Now it takes a design element up a hair, gives it a little bit of a wavy look, and maybe makes this glass even that more expensive. Now as for the rear taillight assembly, you'll see a nice bright red across the middle. Very stylized rear taillights all the way around to the side fenders. Nice body color all the way around. And as for safety, of course, we talked about a minute ago, you can't see out this back glass should that tonneau cover be misplaced, but of course you do have a backup camera and backup sensors, but I do like to add that third look, which is right through here. Now lower fascia is going to be really low down here at the back end, but I like the fact that this really brings the whole thing back together with a nice clean design. Swinging around to the good old grill warfare, in this case the lack thereof, because really with the nosing of this vehicle, there's just not a lot of room to, well, design a grill. But with what they had, they designed it quite well, really giving this vehicle a cool front end compared to the overall nerdish look. Now what you're going to see is really a contrasting in the overall design, really with body color contrasted with this nice black insert here. Even better is the stylized headlights in one of the narrowest lenses I've ever seen, with these cube 4 headlamps. Now really it bubbles out and sculpts, really a spectacular design. Now it couples nicely with this stacked light here, really for some rope accenting. Now that really couples nicely with the back design as well, where you see that same stackability. Even a better lamp here. Now overall, there's some nice chiseling, like I mentioned, lower fascia, and again, really low ground clearance. So what you're going to do is really stop short of any curves, because this is a scraping effect. Now we of course know this is a hybrid, so it has the battery gas powered engine, but what exactly do we have here? Now it is specifically a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder engine. Now net power is going to be 121 horses and 105 foot-pounds of torque. Now really the true horsepower is about 95 horses, with all that coming together for a net of just over 120. Now what you're going to find on estimated fuel economy is 133 miles per gallon in the EV mode. Now the hybrid version is going to be a little bit more down to earth, averaging 55 in the city, 53 on the highway, and 54 combined. Now the total range for that is 640 miles. Not too shabby considering it's a very modest fuel tank. If you weren't ready for the outside, you're definitely not going to be ready here on the inside, because it's definitely breaks the mold. First in the overall look. Now if you look at the contrastability here, first with a bright white accent with some nice darker trim, and that's all the way around, even in the sculpting of the seats, which has a lot of sport styling, but not cramped at all. Not too much bolstering. Anybody's going to fit in quite well here. Now what you're also going to find is all the electronics, and we'll see this in a minute, but also, well, there's no gauge cluster. If you're not familiar with the Prius, there is nothing here. Instead, it's all positioned here in the middle, and it does give you a lot of information, but they kind of put it to the side because you're really not going to have to refer to it all the time. What you will refer to instead is the heads-up display straight out in front of you, gives you your typical speedometer as you're going down the road, and does give you even information of the speed in the certain area you're driving. Now what I also like is the overall comfort. Now again, the seats are nice and bolstered. I found me to fit in here quite well, and you do have nice elbow support. First in this huge center console, nice and padded, and modest offering here on the left side. Now what you're going to find is decent leg room, about 43 inches in the front, 33 in the back. Now that is somewhat compromising for backseat drivers, but with the amount of room you have up here, really most drivers are going to slide forward. In the back, it's going to average more like 34, 35, 36, again, depending on the stature of the driver. One of the biggest things took a little bit getting used to was literally the biggest thing on the dash. Huge screen in the middle, really allows you to see a massive navigation screen, almost life size, with some lower quadrants for some other information, specifically for your entertainment, which separates the screen, or for your climate. Now that did take a little bit getting used to because there are no climate controls, traditional ones on the side. So if you're used to just turning a knob and cooling down or heating up real quick, well, it's just not going to happen. You have to get to this screen first, but all the modes are really easy to see. Your fan speed, more of a touch sensitive like system here. Now there is some other functions here. If you forget and lose your way, really allows you to navigate almost like an iPad, well, a massive iPad at that. Now, if you're looking for the gauge cluster, again, don't look behind the steering wheel, but instead center atop the dash. Now, you'll find your typical information, nice digital readout for the speed, but no tachometer to speak of. Now, the fuel gauge is right across the top, nice and narrow, so it takes a little bit of steering to get used to it, but again, tons of fuel range on this vehicle, so you'll probably not look at that much anyway. Now, other information here, specifically even your driving modes, which gear you're in, and just some other information. Now what I like is that is nice and centered, but the biggest thing you're really going to use is the heads-up display, which you'll see way up there, but allows you to really forget about all that on the dash and look straight ahead. Gear shifting is going to be in the form of this simple function knob right here. Now you do have the switch over to simple drive, and you do have the switch over for reverse. Now what you'll notice in reverse is that when you go to reverse, you do have the backup screen, but you also have, well, that annoying backup noise. Now, it took a minute to understand what this beeping was for, and while I still yet to understand, it constantly beeps the entire time you're in reverse. Now, that is distracting for one, because it's not really alerting you of anything other than you are in reverse. What it also does is conflict with the blind spot awareness, the backup sensors. Should a vehicle cross into your path as you're backing up, that will also alert. So this noise right here, in my opinion, needs to go away. Now looking back at the gear shifter again, you do have simple battery mode, which is basically going to be straight down. The battery is only going to work if there is enough charge. If there's not, it's just not going to let you do it, so you will have to switch over to a normal drive. Now one thing to get used to is parking is not even here at all. Instead, it's just simply a button. So in most cases, when you get to where you're going, just simply hit park. Now I've even found an even worse shortcut, which I don't suggest, which is when you get to where you're going, just simply turn it off and, well, it'll shift to park for you. Your driving modes can be found down here. Driving is going to be normal, power mode, econo mode, and those are just three functions. Now you do have the electric vehicle mode, which is right here, and well, the EV auto. EV auto is a better way to go. Now it's just going to combine the knowledge of this vehicle and really put you in battery mode as much as possible and go into hybrid here and there, because after all, why did you buy this vehicle? Well, to pretty much use the battery. So let the EV auto handle it and you forget about everything else. Between the front drivers, you find two cup holders with nice grippers here to hold your beverages. Also connectivity with the power supply here, USB connection, and auxiliary jack. Now you also find a special charging area here. Power's on, and it is one of those ones that you basically set the phone down, has the special battery pack, and charges by just sitting there. This vehicle in theory has room for 5, but not when you set the back seats up with coupe style seating, really with individualized attention for your backseat drivers, even divided by a center console with dual cup holders and a huge center storage area. Now it does it for this edition of Road Warrior, and a test drive behind the wheel of the 2017 Toyota Prius Prime, a model that is a hybrid plug-and-play like version, basically giving you those three options: the gasoline, the hybrid, or the full electric mode. What we truly like is, again, the 5-door like styling, giving you that extra cargo room back there if you need it, but even better, decent volume on the inside. And what you truly feel like is technologically advanced when you climb inside with that spectacular dash that you see on this upgraded model. Now, as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.